Hi everyone, I'm Ben and this is my Kickstarter project. I've been into electronics for a very long time. I picked up a soldering iron for the first time when I was 8 years old and never looked back. I've been tinkering ever since. I'm now a degree qualified engineer and I'm very passionate about electronics and about software. I work in the electronics software related industry. But my other great passion is music and music-related electronics. I've played guitar since I was 12 years old, and I'm from a very musical family. I always dreamed of making and not just making my own gear. I've kind of always done that. Even since I got into electronics, some of the first things I did was build amplifiers, as many electronics enthusiasts do. But I've always dreamed of guitar and effects and how to get the best tone, you know. There's a saying me and some of my other guitarist friends have, it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of tone. And so to that end, you know, I've always wanted to make a really great overdrive that didn't have all the problems plagued by typical overdrives. And I really just wanted to start with something simple that was elegant, that solved a lot of the problems. And the result is this. It's yet another Tube Screamer type clone, only I believe way better than the original Tube Screamer. It's called the Screaming Dolly. This one's a little beat up. It's my pre-production prototype, and I've been using it for a few months now on the road, loading in, loading out. It's taken a beating. It's stood up to the rigors of the road. Because it's, I think, a really great design. As far as the actual design goes, it's superior. But tone-wise, it's better, and it solves a lot of the problems. I'll do some A/B testing a little later on, but just comparing to the original TS or TS-808 reissue, this is a fantastic, classic-sounding overdrive. Everyone loves the tone of this, but there are a few problems with it. Firstly, the input and output buffer transistors that were used in the original circuit don't seem to be available anymore, and there are different substitutes put in there which are not particularly inferior, but they're not particularly low noise either. The original operational amplifier or op-amp used in this guy is an RCA 4558. Those have been out of production since early 80s, and there are many substitutes for that as well, like NJM 4558, which is the New Japan radio chip that's used in this guy. That's a great sounding chip. Tone-wise, it's fine. It's got all the characteristics that make for a good overdrive pedal, except one thing, it's not a low noise op-amp. It was low noise in 1976, but by today's standards, it's terrible. I get a noticeable increase in the hiss in any amp using this thing. What I wanted to do is solve some of these problems, and so I've used, in my device, I've modified the circuitry. Instead of using a bipolar transistor on the input buffer, I've used a very high impedance, very low noise Japanese-made FET. These are hard to get and very, you know, boutique, kind of expensive when you can get them. And I've found here in the USA a really good second source company called Linear Systems. They make a replacement for that FET. Again, they're not cheap, but they're extremely high quality and extremely low noise. And for those of you out there who are into the figures and whatnot, it's a 1 nanovolt, it's less than 1 nanovolt per root hertz of noise, which is pretty low. A couple of years ago, another semiconductor company that's a really great semiconductor company, it's now a part of TI, originally it was called National Semiconductor, they released an op-amp that was specifically for high fidelity audio, and the goal of that op-amp was to reach into hi-fi, analog hi-fi markets with high-end stereo equipment and expensive stereo equipment, and also professional audio. But the net result of that, again, was an operational amplifier that had extremely low noise and distortion, but lended itself very well to making a really great overdrive pedal. And that's the op amp I've chosen to use in this. It's an LM4652, I believe is the part number. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But the net result is a pedal that's got the same classic tone of a great overdrive pedal, but with none of the problems of noise, and it's got a nice high input impedance, so it doesn't mess with the tone of your actual guitar or its pickups. There are just a couple of other improvements. I wanted a pedal that had a very rugged appearance, but not just rugged appearance, but a rugged design. So you can see here, I've got, it's out of focus there, but you can see I've got a very tough front panel there with gold-plated and silkscreen markings. I've got gold-plated markings around the pots, and this is a very unique feature of my design, is this side spread LED that's actually a warm white LED. So the idea is that on a dark stage, your tone control, your volume control, and the gain control are all lit sideways by this warm white coloured LED, which is fairly unique. You know, all the other pedals, I noticed on the market today, there's an awful lot of blue LEDs that shine right up into your face as you're looking down onto your pedal board. This one doesn't do that because it's specifically designed to cast the light out sideways. And so there's a few practical, useful enhancements as well. But it's a very tough design. You might notice I've got 3 jacks in mine as well. I'm trying to decide whether this is really useful or not, but this center jack is basically a TRS split jack. So I had this configured so I could plug an expression pedal into this and use it as a master volume pedal that's built into the pedal. Or you could use it to take your overdriven signal out before the level control and before the output buffer, and pass that through some other effects and back in here. So when you use the bypass on this overdrive, it also bypasses whatever's in this loop. So that's a very handy feature if you wanted to maybe use a graphic EQ pedal or an extra maybe a small tube preamp pedal to go along with this and have it all controlled with the single foot switch. You can do that using this. So there's a number of useful features there. I'll just take the cover off to show you what's inside. Grab my screwdriver here. Another characteristic of the design is it's incredibly rugged. Way more rugged than the typical pedals manufactured from the 80s, particularly, like the TS and many other pedals made in Japan at the time or in China today. And it's not that they're not very good, some of them are very good, but this is better. It's designed so that everything mounts on a single printed circuit board. And there it is here. The circuit board almost entirely fills up the case, and there's just enough room for the battery in that corner there. Again, the battery's switched off if there's nothing plugged into the input jack, so it's not going to get wasted. But with everything mounted using this PCB, these high quality Cliff jacks, and the true bypass foot switch, that's the other difference between this and the original other overdrives, is that they're using FET bypass, which is a noiseless switching, which is good, but it adds extra silicon into the signal chain, which can, over many pedals in series, can degrade the signal. And many people choose to spend extra money. They'll buy one of these and they'll spend even more money having it modified to add a true bypass. This is built into my pedal. The other differences, there's some actual circuit differences because of tone-wise. I felt that while the original Screamer style overdrives, they do produce a very unique tone that's very good, but in certain situations and matched with certain guitars and certain amps, they're actually quite gutless. And I felt what I wanted was a wider range of overdrives. Because I was using higher quality op amp and input and output buffer components, I've been able to increase the overall gain range. The original Tube Screamer has a minimum gain of something like 6 dB, which means even at the lowest setting, you're already actually overdriving, so it makes it hard to use just as a clean volume booster. This pedal, I've got the gain able to go all the way back to 0. With the output buffer, you can actually boost a little bit. So you can use this as a fairly clean booster with a little bit of a tone control. So that's one option. The other thing is, on the full setting, it's actually more than twice the gain of the original Tube Screamer style pedal, so you can actually get a real nice creamy full-on overdrive there. It still doesn't quite sound like a high gain amp. It's something in between, so it's very versatile. The other thing that I did tone-wise was I increased the value of some of the capacitors in the circuit, so there's more bass frequencies getting through. Basically, more of the low end is able to be overdriven as well, because the original TS style overdrives, you know, some people feel, and I kind of agree, that with the certain amp and guitar combinations, they can be a little bit gritty or tinny or gutless sounding. So I've overcome that by modifying the actual values of a lot of the circuit components in here as well. So it's really a unique sound. You can get anything from the classical TS style tone out of this thing, but you can drive it a bit harder. You can get a bit fuller sound out of it, and I just think it's a really great result. I'm very, very happy with how it sounds. I like it, and I hope you like it too. So check out the sound samples on the Kickstarter page, and yeah, sponsor the project. Get one of these babies. I'm going to go to production. It's completely dry, classic rock sound with a typical, like a Tweed style amp. Good indie rock sort of sound there. Dial back the tone a bit so you can hear what that sounds like. It's not dialed right back, it's still nice. This is with a PAF style humbucker, by the way. Switch to single coil. Bit of more of a stratty kind of thin tone. So I'll go back, let's do a neck humbucking pickup. throw a bit of reverb on this. It's not so dry. So you hear what it sounds like with a bit of verb. I'll dial the drive right back so you can hear what it sounds like. So it's pretty much back to nothing, it's just completely clean. So I'll turn the output level up. You got yourself a clean boost with a bit of extra tone control. So you can get it real bright if you want. And dial that back, crank this all the way out for a full-on rock. Okay, so if you wanted a more creamy sound, you could use it as a first stage overdrive. I've got this tube overdrive from the 80s here. It's more of a high gain overdrive, sort of almost a preamp really. It's definitely a high gain pedal. It's very bright too, so I've dialed the treble right back on that. But this kind of would emulate something like a, I guess, a Marshall-y kind of sound. With this in front of that, I'll dial the drive back a bit. It gives it that extra, the good chuggy chug chug if you're going to do like 80s metal covers or prog rock. Bit of delay there. So you can even do a mouse thing. I'll just switch that actually to, I'm going to switch over to a different amp now. Turn that off. This is a, well, let me turn that master down there. It's like a British high gain Class A amp. That's the amp on its own with the gain up sort of halfway, or a little more than halfway. Again, this in front of a tube amp with reasonably high gain, but not dialed all the way up. It adds that chuggability, but without making it muddy. Unless you dial it way up. That's probably absolutely nice. Sweet spot, I reckon, is about halfway if you're driving it into a high gain amp. If you're using it on its own, probably somewhere around 2:30, 3 o'clock. And again, back to the tweed style amp. It's got a lot of definition. You can still, you can play chords, but you still hear every note. That's what I like about it. Back on reverb on. And just for something different, let's try switching to a Vox style amp like an AC15. It's very similar to the Fender style amps, most typical low gain sort of sound. This is a really sweet overdrive to use with a low gain amp and a fat guitar like this one with my CN22 pickups. They're really nice PAF style, only better. But yeah, so hopefully that gives you enough taste of this Screamin' Dolly to want to get one, want to support my Kickstarter project. Thanks guys for listening, and I really appreciate it.